Hello, everyone. It's a joy to be together and to welcome our dear friend and colleague, Christopher Hobbs. I've known of Christopher for, 50 years, and I think I crossed his path in Santa Cruz in the 70s. So we've gone through a lot of, shared history together. And he's going to enlighten us a bit on the use of mushrooms as medicine. So, Chris, please take your time and let us know who you are and just how this all comes forward. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, yes, glad to be here with you. And I guess I'll take these. I don't really need my glasses except when it's fine print in low light. So I'll go without the glasses. Yes, again, it's really great to be here and share some about the healing and nutritious properties of mushrooms, which there are a lot. And we're going to go into mushrooms. I've been studying mushrooms and growing them and eating them and going out in the woods looking for them for since 1977. I hate to mention that, but there you are, 1977. And one of the first mushroom conferences in this country. And a lot of people got together, the 3 classes or so. They did up on Orcas Island. Paul Stamets was the initiator of it. And we all got pretty excited about mushrooms at the time. And that hasn't left me since. So I've been out in the woods a lot looking for mushrooms. Unfortunately, I moved to the Sierra foothills, which is probably about the worst place I think a worse place would be the Coachella Valley down by Palm Springs. You're not going to get too many mushrooms down there. And it's so dry and hot up here. And recently, the last 3 or 4 years, we don't get any rain until Thanksgiving. We used to get rain, at least in the Santa Cruz Mountains where I used to live. We would get rain starting in October, and then we'd start getting mushrooms all the way through February. And that was great. But nowadays, not until Thanksgiving. And even then at Thanksgiving, there isn't enough rain. It's just the first rain. And so it doesn't really start going until middle of November. I hope you live in a place that has more rain than we do, because our rainfall, it all comes at once in January and February, and we get quite a bit of rain, but it's all at once within a few weeks, or maybe a couple months at most. So I'm hoping we're going to get a change this year, and it'll start. How many of you are mushroom hunters? How many of you go out in the woods and look for mushrooms? Anybody? 1 or 2? That's good. It's a wonderful thing to do. Very healing. You get forest therapy as well, it's always going to be good. And then there are the mushrooms. So I'm just, my background is I'm a writer and a teacher. I come from a family of professors and teachers. So I taught at UC Berkeley and the naturopathic colleges. And right now I'm teaching at the University of Massachusetts, but all online right now. It didn't used to be online, but now it's all online. And I've written a number of books, and including my new book, which is apropos to this topic, Medicinal Mushrooms, The Essential Guide, just came out. And if you're interested in mushrooms at all, I think you're going to like it. It's very detailed, but it's got lots and lots of pictures, beautiful pictures. They did a fantastic job making it really artistic. And it's a really high quality book that they put together. So I write books and do a lot of teaching. I'm also a licensed acupuncturist, and I've had a clinical practice for a long time. I took some time off to write this book, but now I'm starting my clinical practice up again online, and I'll be announcing that on my website very soon, ChristopherHobbs.com. And you'll probably see that if you're on Facebook too. You can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I have a YouTube channel with some videos, and I just like to educate and share about the healing properties of plants. And I'm really especially keen on mushroom medicine, but also just food medicine. So the uses of food and nutrition and lifestyle changes for medicine. When we think of medicine, what do you think of when someone says, well, how do you define medicine? Well, oftentimes people think of pills, right? Pills from the doctor, take your medicine on time. So we often as a culture, we think about medicine as just being some pills that we get that are prescribed, or maybe we go down to the drugstore and get some OTC pills or syrup or something, and that's medicine. But I'm just really encouraging everyone all of us to start thinking about medicine in a much broader perspective. In other words, a hug, being out in the woods, obviously great nutrition, growing a garden and eating the food right out of the garden. I mean, to me, that's what we have to start thinking about really as medicine. And all the spices in our cabinet. So many of the spices like cinnamon and ginger, many of the spices that are in our cabinet, turmeric especially, have been studied and screened for being effective and useful for COVID. So I just read a couple of studies recently. Turmeric really is the number one herb that has been studied out there for COVID. If you have COVID, take up to 5-6 grams a day of the powder, or if you're using a bioenhanced one that has phosphatidylcholine in it, because the bioavailability of the curcumin is fairly low, and also our liver breaks down the curcumin into a more inactive form. So make sure to take enough of turmeric, but it has an anti-inflammatory effect, but it also blocks the virus from binding to ACE2 receptor sites on our cells. So it has a very good protective effect. I think we could be taking it regularly during the time that there are viruses around that we're concerned about. So that's probably the leading herb. And another one that you may not know about that's really interesting is Rosemarinick acid. That's not an herb, but Rosemarinick acid is a very, very potent anti-inflammatory, one of nature's strongest anti-inflammatories, and also has very good antiviral activity along with curcumin from turmeric. And the two plants that are the absolute highest in Rosemarinick acid are spearmint is the highest, believe it or not, interestingly. And second is lemon balm. And it's great. Lemon balm is good because it just goes crazy. I mean, when I first got to my farm here on 2 acres in Placerville, outside of Placerville, I started planting my gardens, and then all of a sudden a lemon balm popped up, and I thought, oh, great, here's a lemon balm. It volunteered. So I let it go. A couple of years, it started getting bigger and bigger. And then I don't know if you've had this experience. If you've grown lemon balm, you know what I'm talking about. And after 3 years, even after it started spreading, I didn't really think much of it. I thought, I love lemon balm, and I'll just give it as much space as it needs. Well, now it's ridiculous. It's like taken over my entire raspberry patch, about half of my front yard, and I still love it. But now I'm pulling it up more and cutting it. So what you do is you take the lemon balm and you cut it and you boil it down. We're not looking for the essential oil. We're looking for the phenolics, the phenolic compound, the rosemarinic acid, and so forth. And you just boil it down till it's really thick, and then just blend it all up. If you want to use just the leaves, that's fine, but you can put the young tender stems in there, cook the whole thing, boil it for half hour, let it cool down, blend it all up, and then simmer that down until it's pretty thick, like a smoothie consistency. And then just go ahead and pour it into your, food dehydrator, fruit leather tray, or if you have a convection oven and you don't have a food dehydrator, you can put some wax paper down or something, and then pour it onto that and spread it out and dry it and then powder it. And then once you have that, so what you're doing is you're taking the whole herb and you're boiling it, and concentrating it down, and then drying it and powdering it, and you have about a 5-to-1 extract. So 1 part of the dried extract is equivalent to the amount of rosmarinic acid that is in 5 times the amount that you have. So if you have, say, an ounce of finished extract, that is equivalent to all the rosmarinic acid in 5 ounces of the original dried herb. So it concentrates it, makes it very bioavailable, and that's a valuable product. So if you just happen to have a lot of lemon balm out there, then cut it and boil it down. Also, you may know that lemon balm extract, if you make a salve out of it or a cream, that is absolutely the best antiherpetic out there. Absolutely nothing better.
I got a question. We have a lot of lemon verbena. Is verbena and balm
completely different?
Yeah, we do have a lot of verbena though.
Lemon verbena is beautiful as a tea for calming and digestion, but lemon balm is in the mint family.
Okay.
And it's completely different. Yeah,
I thought so.
This doesn't have the lemon verbena. Doesn't have the phenolics.
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably think this is an herb class here, not a mushroom class. So I'm going to get my my PowerPoint up here and share my screen. This it? Yeah, that's it. Now I'm going to share my screen here. Tell me if you don't see it.
Not yet. Coming on. It's coming.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Am I looking up at some mushrooms?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is some nice reishi that I found in North Carolina on dead hemlock, Ganoderma sugi. Unfortunately, the hemlock had to die for the mushroom to sprout out like this with all of its beautiful fruiting bodies. Here's my book again. Check it out. It's available. So first I'm going to talk somewhat about the benefits, the nutritional and health benefits generally of mushrooms. This is really a big moment for mushrooms and fungi in general, as you know. It's in the news a lot. A lot of people are getting interested in mushrooms. A lot of young people are starting businesses and growing mushrooms and extracting them. And that's pretty exciting, what's happening out there. I've seen it just really explode in interest over the last 5 years, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. It's just unbelievable what's happening out there. And so many people are interested. I'm going to take a quick break here. So what I think most people don't understand now, and because a lot of people want to use mushrooms for medicine, and that means extracting them, growing them, and drying them and powdering them and putting them into capsules. See the medicine again. More and more powders are coming on the market because you can mix those in smoothies. You can mix it in your food like a reishi powder, turkey tail powder, lion mane. So a lot of people are going to powders now. They're more convenient, and you get more for your money because you don't have to pay to have it encapsulated. But that's our mindset, that medicine has to be in capsules or pills. So the powders are very good. You can buy some good ones out there. You can also buy some that have a lot of starch in them. I'll talk about that later a little more. But I think what people don't realize is mushrooms are really one of the most nutritious foods that we can eat. There is a lot of fiber. Mushrooms are one of the highest fiber foods out there, number one. And number two, they are an incredible protein source. So there's a lot of protein in mushrooms, especially like oyster mushrooms have a lot of protein. They're up to 25, even 30% protein. And the protein is just as high quality as animal products. That's what's so exciting about it. Because when you get a lot of protein from vegetables and from the vegetable kingdom, that's great. It adds up. We do get some protein eating a lot of vegetables and grains and so forth, and beans. We do get protein, but the protein is not as complete and it's not as high quality as animal protein typically. But it turns out that mushrooms, the protein is just as valuable. It's just as high quality. It's just as assimilable and utilizable. In fact, maybe more so than some animal products. Not only that, but I have a slide coming up too that you'll see that shows that it's just so much more efficient obtaining protein from crops. Say you're growing mushrooms in 1 acre. I mean, you can get so much more protein out of that 1 acre of mushrooms than you can if you're grazing cattle or you have dairy cows and getting milk. It's just like so many more times greater, more efficient, and easier on the environment too. And not only that, but mushrooms can eat almost any type of substrate, straw, any type of organic waste. They can grow on it and they can produce incredible nutrition. So I think a lot of people aren't really tuning into that aspect of mushrooms. So I'm going to get my laser pointer here. Pointer. And I'm going to point out that mushrooms also are incredibly valuable for their mineral content. They're one of the highest foods in trace minerals like zinc, copper, iron, amazingly high in these important trace minerals. Also, they're very, very high, and they're very high in calcium and potassium. Not calcium. They're very high in phosphorus and potassium. And they're also very high in B vitamins. So they contain all the B vitamins. It's like taking a vitamin pill almost if you're drying the mushroom and using them or eating them fresh. Again, food and medicine. And Pleurotus or oyster mushroom really are one of the better protein sources on the planet. Again, up to 30% protein. They're a great slimming food. They don't have much fat. They have some important fatty acids, but certainly no saturated fat or cholesterol. And they're a great slimming food because you're going to get high nutrition, high mineral and vitamins. You're going to be getting a lot of usable protein. And so you're going to become satiated a lot more quickly. In fact, there's a clinical trial that was just performed. I don't have it in my show yet, but I just read it a few days ago that shows that when people get their protein daily from mushrooms, they feel a lot more satisfied than if they're getting their protein from meat. Believe it or not, they get satisfied earlier, and so they don't eat as much. And there's actually a clinical trial on that. Some mushrooms are very good at regulating cholesterol levels. The shiitake and oyster especially are very good at helping to keep the cholesterol levels down and in a healthy range. And again, they are one of the highest fiber foods of all. And I mentioned that the mushroom protein is about 2 times more digestible than what you find in most vegetables, and that includes beans. It's also a very important part of our forests and a lot of other places, like even in fields and forests, everywhere that there are plants growing in trees, mushrooms are attached to the roots. They're mycorrhizal with the roots. And this is really crucial for the health of the forest. They also contain a lot of low molecular weight compounds like phenolic compounds, which are potent and very powerful antioxidants. And they also contain immunomodulating compounds called beta-glucans, which are studied in labs all over the world for the last 20 years and found to be, as far as we know so far, it's the most potent and most effective immunomodulator, reducing inflammation while at the same time upregulating immune cells that help produce for instance, antibodies, and can help remember pathogens like T memory cells, can help up level those so that they're more effective. So we don't know of any natural substance or drug for that matter that can do this to such an extent that mushroom beta glucans can. Now here, as you can see, total dietary fiber. Some of these mushrooms, the total dietary fiber is 46, 47, 40%. That's astounding. That's higher fiber than any other food. And here down here, you're seeing some, for comparison, you're seeing citrus pulp, which is a very, very high fiber food, and beet pulp is around 34%, whereas mushrooms many of them are up much higher than that. So it's it really is astounding. Now let's look at fiber a little bit more, and fiber is such an important part of our diet. I just want to mention that the average person in the United States gets around 15 grams of fiber per day, whereas the government is saying you should get 25 grams per day. And people eating a traditional diet are actually getting up to 40 or 50 grams of fiber per day. And see, you're getting here, here's a meta-analysis that looked at 12 studies on the benefits of fiber. And they found a significantly lower risk of almost 10% was seen for both cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease with every additional 7 grams a day of fiber that was consumed. So if you even get 14 more grams and you're getting up to what the government recommends, 25 grams a day, people could get they would be 20% less likely to have chronic illnesses, and that includes diabetes too, and cancer and heart disease. If you got up to 40 grams of fiber a day, you can calculate that out. That is going to be a very significant difference. And you can see that that 3 medium shiitakes you get, which is, if I eat shiitakes for dinner, I'm going to at least eat 3 medium shiitakes. I probably eat more than that. I'm going to get 7 grams more of fiber in my diet. And so that's going to really, just eating shiitake regularly is going to reduce your risk of chronic disease by almost 10%. Pretty impressive. Here's a chart showing the average person here is getting 15 grams of fiber or thereabouts. And that's a standard risk. If you get a low fiber diet, like a lot of people do in our country, that is going to increase your risk up to probably, like for instance, don't forget, animal products or animal foods have 0 fiber. Animal foods have 0 fiber. So that's a big reason why if you switch, or maybe you already have, but if you switch to mainly a whole foods plant-based diet, you are going to significantly lower your risk of chronic disease, and you're going to live longer and healthier and a happier life, no doubt. And this is based on decades and decades of hardcore scientific research that shows a whole foods plant-based diet is absolutely the best diet on the planet for longevity and for health. And so here you're seeing that if you get 45 grams of fiber per day, you have a 38% lower risk of developing cardiovascular disease. And if you have like a hardcore traditional diet where there's no processed food around at all, and you're getting 58 grams a day, you can get a 50% reduction in chronic illnesses for that alone. Of course, if you're on a traditional diet, you're probably getting a lot more activity, a lot more exercise. That's going to add some more percentages on there. Probably if you were living in a village outdoors a lot and working physically, and then you had a traditional diet, your risk of these diseases that kill most people in our country and around the world in technologically advanced countries, your risk would be probably only 80 or 20% of what a normal person in our country would be, only 20% of the risk. here is achieving 50 grams of fiber a day. I'm just showing a potential diet here, recipe. And this is pretty much what I eat. One cup of cooked beans of all different types, doesn't matter. Whole grains, oats, I eat oats daily. Medium-sized banana, cooked broccoli, salad, dark green vegetables, nuts and seeds, say a yam, and maybe an apple or some berries. So just with that diet that has very little processed food in it, you can really reduce your risk of chronic illnesses. And there are many reasons why fiber protects our cardiovascular system so much. First of all, it helps reduce our post-meal blood glucose and lipids. We usually get spikes of that, and that can be very damaging to the vessels. So if we eat a lot of fiber, that's going to really protect in that way. It's going to stabilize our blood sugar and our blood lipids. It also, you get a lot of gels coming from fiber, and that slows gastric emptying, which helps increase a feeling of satiety early on. So we're not going to keep eating and eating because we're just not satisfied. We're not getting enough nutrients. And also the soluble fiber and resistant starch molecules, they're fermented. They get down in the gut and they ferment in the gut by all of these billions of bacteria, beneficial bacteria that we have. And that's very important for those beneficial bacteria. Now, I'm sure you're aware that beneficial bacteria do so much for us. They protect us against more toxic types of bacteria, more pathogenic types of bacteria like E. coli strains, some E. coli strains. It also, if we have lots of prebiotics, actually all of these fibers could be called, and we have a really good beneficial microflora there, then not only will the bacteria help protect against more toxic, pathogenic type, but the breakdown products are sugars. And so these sugars our epithelial cells in our gut need those sugars to be active and healthy. So we're literally feeding our own tissues down there in our gut with the breakdown products of these fibers. And also the fiber usually carries with it a lot of phenolic compounds and other antioxidants, which can reduce inflammation and help extend our life. Now here's one on colorectal cancer showing that, and see this UR right here, this triangle, diamond. These are people from the U.S. Railroad that they studied and they followed up for years and years. And they found that they had a very low fiber diet, one of the lowest fiber diets here. And then here's the U.S. down here too. So our country, we're one of the lowest fiber countries out there. And that means that our incidence of colorectal cancer is up here. It's higher than normal than an average around the world. It's definitely higher. It's higher our risk. And here on the other end, we have Corfu, Greece, an island of Greece, which has the absolute highest fiber intake of any place that they studied. And you can see that the risk of colorectal cancer is way, way below what is up here. If you're eating almost, these people up here have almost no fiber in their diet. And down here, they have a traditional diet full of fiber. So hopefully that is a little bit eye-opening there. Now here's a chart showing some of the other nutrients in mushrooms. There's quite a bit of protein. In here you can see that 20 to even 30% in some. And here's the dietary fiber again. Magnesium is somewhat low. Shiitake has pretty, some magnesium in it, but the mushrooms are fairly low in magnesium and calcium. So that's why I think shiitake and greens are one of the best dishes out there, because the greens supply the magnesium and calcium and the mushrooms basically supply everything else. They are high in potassium, though. And then here is the slide that I was telling you about. If you are growing oyster mushrooms on say, per acre, if you on an acre of land, say you're growing mushrooms on an acre of land, you can get 2,240 kilograms of protein, of usable protein, versus if you were grazing cows or had livestock like pigs, or you were raising chickens and you were getting eggs, they can get 42 kilograms per acre from pork, 30 kilograms from eggs, and 48 kilograms from milk. So you can see that it is incredibly much lower production out of the land, and it also takes more resources. So to me, that was very, very exciting to find. Here's the mineral content, another chart just showing the mineral content, showing that the zinc and copper is very good, iron is very good, potassium and phosphorus are very good. However, calcium is low and magnesium is low. Vitamin contents, again, are high. Niacin, riboflavin, pantothenic acid, folic acid, all high. Thiamine, all of it's high in mushrooms. So let's go on to, and after talking about the nutrition, let's talk about the biological activity of fungi, what other benefits we can gain if we're using mushrooms regularly, if we're eating them regularly, and if we're using powders, say, and adding that to our food, our smoothies, making teas out of it. What other benefits are there? Well, all fungi and yeast have triple helix polysaccharides called beta-glucans, and they're a particular type of beta-glucans. Excuse me. I think I have a slide coming up here that shows more on that. So one caveat is that to gain access to all these nutrients in mushrooms, and especially the beta-glucans, which is really one of the most important parts of the mushroom, we have to cook it. We have to cook it well, and that breaks down the cell walls and allows us access to all the vitamins and the minerals and the nutrition. So always make sure to cook mushrooms before using them. Yes, button mushrooms are sliced up and added to a salad, but those are only a few slices. And those are pretty tender mushrooms. A lot of mushrooms aren't that tender, like shiitake even has more fiber than button mushrooms do, and it's not that tender. So they should be cooked for the most part. Heat breaks down the cell walls, breaks down the chitin, which is a very tough polymer that's found in mushroom cell walls, and exposes all the active molecules. And it turns out that then these beta-glucans from the cooked mushroom are going to go down in our gut, and they're going to start interacting with immune tissue. And about 60% of our total immune tissue in our body is found in the gut. And we know that there are receptors down there like dectin and toll-like receptors and other receptors that will bind to the beta-glucans and then initiate all of these incredible all this immune activity. And so here are a few more things about beta-glucans. They act on a variety of membrane receptors on immune cells. They might act singly or in combination with other ligands. So something else might bind along with beta-glucans from the mushroom. Active immune cells include monocytes, macrophages, dendritic cells, natural killer cells, neutrophils. T cells and B cells are all very active immune cells that are upregulated through a whole cascade of activity that happens within our immune cells. So, and then after the immune cells are activated, then all of these, the immune cells can secrete and stimulate the production of many types of interleukins, and like tumor necrosis factor, and interleukins, which will help orchestrate all kinds of other immune activity. And the immunomodulatory functions that are stimulated by mushrooms affect not only our innate immune system, the immune portion of our immune system that is really on demand, that acts really fast and starts gobbling up pathogens, but also on our adaptive immune response, namely the T cells and B cells. And this is a longer term type of immune memory that can act for months and months and months after we're exposed to the beta glucans. So beta glucans are so important. Here is a list of wild fungi, and some of these are cultivated, and how much beta glucans they have in them. It's really interesting that the two mushrooms that have the highest amount of beta glucans are the two that were the most widely used in traditional medicine throughout history for their healing benefits. People didn't know that there were beta glucans in there. They didn't know that these mushrooms had a higher content of them than other mushrooms. They only knew that they were very effective. And so it turns out that turkey tail and reishi are the two mushrooms that have the highest amount of beta glucan of any mushroom. And turkey tail has up to 60% or more beta glucans. That is astounding. It's so much beta glucan. And reishi has up to 54% beta glucan. So these mushrooms are very, when people ask me, well, what mushroom should I use to start with to help prevent cancer as addiction, like a viral infection, even COVID or a flu or a cold, which mushrooms are going to be the most effective to start with? It's always going to be turkey tail and reishi, because these are the absolutely most immunoactive of any mushrooms. Now, other mushrooms have other effects that are beneficial, like lion's mane for the nervous system, and chanterelle. Chanterelle actually has a lot of beta glucan in it. So anyway, I'll get into more details about how some of the other ones are used, but basically, I think it's really good to start off with the ones that are the most immunoactive. But you're seeing here the button mushroom. Look how much that contains, very little compared with some of the other ones. That's why I discourage the use of button mushrooms, and I really encourage going over to shiitake instead, because if you slice up the cap in little slices and you cook with the stalk and the cap, you're going to get over 20% beta glucans, and that's fantastic. Oyster mushroom, the cap has about 24%. Chanterelle, the stalk, some of these tend to be higher. The common honey mushroom has up to 39% beta glucan in the stalk and almost 34% in the stem, in the cap. Porcini, the stalk is up to 58%, and in the cap less. So always eat the stalk of the porcini if you're lucky enough to find one. Maitake, 26, and wood ear, which I encourage people to eat more wood ear. It's very, very delicious. The cap has almost 42% beta glucan. So a lot of mushrooms that we eat out there are very high in beta glucans. Here's how they work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this slide, but I just want to show you. You can follow along. Here's the first step. Here are the beta glucans here, where it shows that wavy molecule up here. They're taken up after we eat them, after we break them down by heating. They're taken up in the gut through the M cells. These are specialized cells. So they migrate through the M cells. They're basically being sampled by the body. And then they're immediately taken up by macrophages that start digesting them and activating them. So that the macrophage sheds these active beta glucan fragments, which then starts revving up a dendritic cell. Here's a dendritic cell right here. And the dendritic cell, one of its main functions is to coordinate immune responses between different types of cells, including the adaptive immune system. So this is the first steps right here. And then after the dendritic cell, you can see here DCs, dendritic cells. After those start revving up, then they start stimulating all kinds of other immune cells like monocytes and all kinds of other ones. And then those start producing cytokines like natural killer cell. And then those start targeting tumor cells. they start targeting, if we have a fungal infection in our body, it would target viral infections and viral infected cells and so forth. So this is basically an overview of what's happening in the immune system, even though a lot of these cells are interactive and they're communicating, they're talking. There's a lot of crosstalk going on. Here is the blow up of the macrophages that are basically taking these beta glucan fragments up and breaking them up and activating them into these beta glucan fragments, which then bind to the dendritic cell or granulocytes, and then they start targeting. They can actually target tumor cells directly then, once they are activated. Here's some other possible indications for mushrooms. Shiitake is fantastic for just if you have a general immune weakness. You can use shiitake. You can cook it. You can make a powder. And it's good for preventing infections of all kinds. Shiitake and turkey tail have both been widely studied in cancer treatment programs along with chemotherapy. Viral syndromes, shiitake, turkey tail, and reishi are really the two best. Again, I'll mention that turkey tail and reishi are the most important for protecting against viruses and cancer cells. Cordyceps is an interesting mushroom that is used to counteract fatigue, to increase our performance, to be used as an adaptogen and an anti-aging supplement. And also reishi for insomnia, anxiety, nervous system disorders related to stress. It's fantastic. Reishi is really the all-around mushroom that is so important and so useful for many types of ailments, including respiratory problems. It's been used for respiratory problems for literally many, many centuries. Now, what are clinical trials like out there? What are the research studies on some of these mushrooms? Turns out that more than 270 recognized species of mushrooms are known to have specific immunotherapeutic properties. They've been studied in lab tests in vitro and in vivo or in clinical trials. 50 non-toxic mushrooms have yielded potential immunoceuticals. In other words, they're widely made into different types of products. And 6 species have been studied in human cancers, including shiitake, turkey tail, reishi, and a few, and schizophyllum or splitkill. So those are some that have been researched in human clinical trials for treating cancer. Now, let's go on to making and choosing the best products. You start thinking, well, I would like to incorporate more mushrooms into my diet, or maybe I want to try to use them for medicine. Well, first things first, bags, not pills. So as I mentioned, you're going to get a lot more out of the mushroom medicine, food medicine. You're going to add it to your food. You're going to add it to tea. You're going to add it to smoothies, and you can sprinkle it on your food. You can use it and put it in soups. So you can fortify any type of food that you want, just adding the powders. So my theory is bags, not pills. And another very important issue is some mushroom products out there contain a fair amount of starch. And so what happens is that unless you're getting fruiting bodies there's kind of a balance here that, there are some companies that sell products made just from fruiting bodies, which is good, that's fine. The mycelium and the fruiting bodies both have the same kind of benefits, but not all products containing them do. So some companies are selling mushroom powders and capsules made only from fruiting body. Unfortunately, it's so labor intensive to grow fruiting bodies like reishi, turkey tail, and so forth, that they aren't as much grown in this country. So if you buy a product that has it's made almost purely or is made purely from fruiting body, it's likely to come from China. And there are some drawbacks for buying products coming from China. Number one, they have to, we can't keep as clear a view on their growing practices Yes, some of them are claiming to be organically grown in China, but their organic laws and regulations and follow through and is just not as good as it is here in this country or in Europe, perhaps. So the rules are a little bit more lax, and and it's just harder if it's 3,500 miles away to kind of keep tabs on it. So that's one problem. Another is that they basically have to ship the product all the way from whatever city they're growing in. Sometimes they're growing in the west of China, ship it all the way to the port, and then ship it over here 3,500 or at least 3,000 miles, shipping it on a boat that's absorbing moisture, and that could cause mold to be growing on the product, other types of fungi, but mold growing on them. I've seen it happen. And another problem is once it enters our country from another country, they may have to fumigate it to kill insect pests and so forth. Probably not in every case, but it is possible that it's going to be fumigated or even irradiated. I don't know of any specific mushrooms that are irradiated, but I hate to tell you, hate to break the news, but some spices are irradiated when they enter this country. So these are the problems with buying fruiting bodies overseas. Now, there are some companies here in this country that grows very, very good mushrooms organically in a very pristine place like Northern Washington. And also they're domestic, they're domestically grown. So there are some real advantages to those. And those are the ones that I typically recommend, the 2 or 3 that actually just grow organically here and that I know don't have excessive amounts of starch in them. They allow the mycelium to grow for a long time, even several months, even though it cuts into their profits, to make sure that the mycelium is consuming all of the brown rice. Fortunately, there is a way that you can see how much starch is in your product, and that's the Starch Test, which I'll show you how to do in a little bit. So test your products with the Starch Test. And make your own tea powders. I'm really encouraging all of us to make our own tea powders, our own medicine. It's so much less expensive. First of all, it's more potent, and it's really exciting and fun to make our own medicine, really. Or if you have a clinical practice, you could make a big pot enough up to supply you for months on end. So if you make some, try making a big batch of it. And it's very easy to do. You simply cut up the fruiting bodies with shears. And by the way, this is in my book, and there are pictures in the book showing you how to do it step by step. You could cut up the fruiting bodies with shears. You could add other herbs if you want, like astragalus, another immune booster, and licorice for flavoring or sweetness. Boil for 1 or 2 hours. And especially if you're cooking a hard conch, like reishi, if you can see my picture here, this one, these are more hard. And there's some conchs even harder, like this Phytoestrogens here. These things are just like wood. So you really have to cut them up, boil them, and if you have a pressure cooker, pressure cook them. That's the best. Pressure cook it on high for 30 minutes. That is going to really break it down and then allow you to let it cool naturally. Blend the cooked fruiting body with the water. And if you're making herb extract, do the same thing. Cook the herb or the mushroom up in your water until it's soft, and then blend it up. Simmer it down a little bit longer until your kind of smoothie consistency is what you're getting out of the residue in the blended herb and water. Should be, starting to get thick. Then you just pour it into a food dehydrator, the fruit leather trays, or if you have trays in the oven with a fan, something like that, that would work. And you take the water off by evaporation, and then you have a wafer or a sheet of mushroom leather, basically. And then you're going to grind that all up and powder it. And you're going to keep that powder in jars, and you're going to use a half teaspoon at a time to a teaspoon as food medicine. And that is going to have all the benefits of the mushroom. You're getting it all. So that's really the best way to do it. And that's a traditional way. I didn't make it up. It's true. I've been the one that really has been pushing it in this country. But on the other hand, it's just because I was in China after my acupuncture license, and that's the method they were using. So they've been using that method for probably many, many centuries. There's the fruit leather trays. You just take your batter, so-called, and pour it in there, and then dehydrate it about 105. And you're going to get this wafer, and you pull the wafer off and powder it. Here's the inserts here. And once you have your powder, once you have your powder, this stuff is really like gold. It contains all the benefits of the mushroom, including the nutrition, fiber, protein. I mean, we should be using teaspoons of it every day in our diet. And you can make it out of shiitake. You can make it out of any mushroom that you want, edible or not. Here's some other key concepts to remember. When you're making medicinal mushroom products, remember that you can tincture them, it's true, but the tinctures don't contain the beta-glucans because beta-glucans have zero solubility in alcohol. You will get the small molecular weight compounds like the phenolic compounds and the terpenes. Those have other benefits. But if you want it all, you have to do a water-based extract, like I mentioned. Double extraction you can boil it and make a strong tea. And then you press the liquid out and you tincture the pulp, the mark that is left over. You tincture that in alcohol, strong alcohol. And then shake it every day for 5 days and then press the liquid out, the tincture, and then add those two together. And you're going to have a 50-50 concentrate of a water extract and an alcoholic extract. So that'll get some of the beta-glucans, but by no means get it all. But some people really like that method. So that I talk about the method in my book and how to do it. Okay.
Chris, there's a question about making the powder and dehydrating and drying it. How long might it keep, and should it be refrigerated or just stored in a dark place?
No, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. It'll last for up to 3 years.
Yeah.
It's pretty stable, and just keep it in a cool, dark place if you can.
Good. Is there a funny taste if the mushrooms start to go? Can you smell it, or is it good?
If the tea, you put the tea, when you're doing a double extraction, you put the tea in the refrigerator. And if you want to make sure it doesn't go off, then you could put a teaspoon of vitamin C powder in there. That'll hold it well. But you're making the tincture over 5 days. I haven't had too many problems as long as I put the tea concentrate right into the refrigerator. Sometimes I add vitamin C, and then I put it in the refrigerator right away. And it's usually okay for 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah.
It'll start fermenting. If it's left out, it would ferment. You'd get bubbles, and it would start tasting off.
So I might have missed something, but clearly, if you have a powder, you're getting more beta-glucans than if you make it into extract. Is that so?
Yes.
Or not necessarily.
Yes. If you're mean, for instance, if you now there are some companies that do it this way. In China, they grow the reishi fruiting bodies or other fruiting bodies. They take the fruiting bodies and they grind that up maybe, and then start boiling, or they might use a pressure cooker even to try to get as much beta-glucans and nutrition and phenolics and terpenes out as possible. And then they throw the fruiting bodies away. And then they take that liquid and they spray dry it in a vacuum chamber onto a carrier. And the typical carrier that's used is maltodextrin. So in that case, you could buy a 1.5 ounce bag for $36 because it's so concentrated. And they're guaranteeing 15% beta-glucan. Well, but look at it this way. If you take the reishi fruiting body and you boil it up, you grind it up and boil it up as hard as you can, even in a pressure cooker, at maximum, you're only going to get about 20% of the beta-glucan out. They're just not that water soluble. So even under pressure. So that means that you're throwing away 80% of the beta glucans and probably a lot of other things like the fiber. You're definitely throwing a lot of the fiber away.
Yeah.
So that's why this method that I'm talking about, you cook up the reishi, you blend it up, you simmer it down, and then you dry it and powder it. You're getting everything. You're getting all of the beta glucans. You're getting all of the fiber. You're getting all of the vitamins and minerals. And you can buy an 8-ounce bag of this type of an extract for $36, same price as an 1.5-ounce bag of the extract where they spray dry it onto maltodextrin. So that's something to really keep in mind, that you're just getting so much more value.
Is there any extraction by just chewing on little chips of reishi? Is the enzymatic, our own enzymatic digestive, going to pull out much? Because we got some that was fairly palatable and chewable. My wife was chewing away on it. And, is there something to be said for that if you can deal with the flavor?
Sure. I mean, some reishis are very bitter.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get a little something out of it. If you're chewing, like I've got these strips here. If you can see it, these are this is the reishi caps that have been cut into strips, and you can buy boxes of these in a Chinese herb shop. Well, yeah, you could chew on that and masticate it and suck on it and keep it in your mouth for a while. You'd get something, no doubt. But you don't expect to get, even if you ate this whole strip, you're not going to get even a fraction of what you would get out of a steam heated powder. Only a fraction of it, but still, if it's fun to do it, then you're getting a little.
You get the flavor. The flavor triggers some good reactions.
Yeah, you're getting the flavor too. So here again, you can make a double extraction. You can make a tincture, and you can make a cream. Lion's mane cream is widely used in Asia. So for treating wounds and healing wounds. So yeah, you could make creams, you could make salves out of reishi or whatever, or chaga. Chaga has such a high phenolic compound, potent phenolics in it, that you could use it as an anti-inflammatory in salve as well, if you wanted to.
Topical.
So again, you have to choose the product. Sorry for interruption there. Let's see. I want to point out that you absolutely want the highest beta glucan possible. Standardization now is you're not seeing 20 to 25 yet, but you are seeing 15% beta glucan guaranteed out there. And so I would start with that. If I could get 15% beta glucan guaranteed, that's the product I would buy, because I know that it's going to have the other compounds in there too. It's a marker compound, but also it's going to mean that there's a lot of fungal biomass in there. So always look for 15% beta glucan standardization. And there are, maybe a couple of companies only out there that do that. But if you don't have standardization, then you have to do the starch test. Make sure it doesn't have too much starch in it. So here's a paper here, McCleary and Draga, 2016. You can access the paper by just going on to Google Scholar and typing in McCleary and Draga 2016, and then beta glucan. And the paper will come up. You can read it. What they did is they took the products off the shelves, and then they used the most approved method and a validated method for testing mushrooms for beta glucans that is out there, the beta glucan test from Megazyme, the only one that's really proven. And they found that quite a few products out there had a lot of starch and very low beta glucan. However, some had, a nominal amount of beta glucan. So this paper here will give you more details if you're interested. And again, the starch test is very easy to do. You just get some Lugol solution. I get my Lugol, I think is 15%. no, 2%. So
Yeah.
you get Lugol 2% solution. I got it off Amazon. You can get it other places. And so what you do is you take a capsule and you open it up, and you put it in some water here and stir it up until you get an amber colored liquid. Then you go ahead and put, I don't know, 4 or 5 drops, 2 to 3 drops of iodine tincture in there.
Yes.
If it turns bright blue, it's full of starch. This is a classic old-time starch test.
And Lugol is an iodine solution.
Iodine solution, 2% iodine solution.
Okay.
If it's got glycogen in it, which is mushroom glucose polymers, then it could be a little purple like this. That's not too much good either. That means that the mushroom has digested all the glucose in the brown rice and stored it as glycogen, stored it as an energy source, which might have a little bit of immunomodulation to it, but not nearly as much as the beta glucan. So if you get some blue,
is that a bad sign, or you're going to get a little bit of blue?
Yeah, you're going to get a little bit of blue if their mushrooms were grown on rice. Even if they've been left to grow on them for 3 months and consume 90% of the starch, which is going to be good. That's what you're looking for. And it actually, the mycelium growing on rice could start producing fruiting bodies, believe it or not. They produce a significant amount of fruiting bodies. I can show you here. I've got a picture of it right here, where you can see how much fruiting body they can actually produce growing on brown rice. Here's the picture right here, and I'll hold it up so you can see it. This is a block of rice, brown rice, and it's produced all of these fruiting bodies. You can see it's mostly fruiting body. That's growing on brown rice. So you can do it, but you have to wait for months. And most manufacturers don't like to wait because that time is money. They have to sit there in their grow room for 3 months before they really start getting a lot of fruiting bodies. That's why so many products out there growing on rice are going to fail the starch test. So if you put the drops in there and you get a little tiny bit of blue that then fades away pretty fast, then it's not a problem. But if it stays blue, if it gets dark blue like this and stays blue, it doesn't change back, then you've got a problem. You've got a lot of starch in there. Okay, let's go on here, and I'm just going to go over some. You're going to make this PowerPoint available, right? So
yeah, you send me the slides. We'll share them with the group. Yeah.
Okay, then you certainly
you don't have to read them all.
Yeah, there's just a lot of information here, but this is a really good show. I just made it up recently. I changed the way I'm presenting the material by the symptom and the ailment. Which ones to use. And so this is kind of a summary right here. This one and the next slide are a summary of what, and then I have all the details. So I'm going to go through these two here and talk about these different benefits of mushrooms. First of all, anti-aging. So when you think of anti-aging, what biological effects do you want to promote with mushrooms? You certainly want antioxidants. You want mushrooms with a high antioxidant benefit, like people know if you take green tea capsules, or you drink a lot of green tea, or grapeseed extract, or pomegranate juice like Palm Wonderful. All of those have a lot of phenolic compounds in it that supposedly are powerful antioxidants, which helps protect our cells from free radical damage. It's basically, we're going to produce a lot of free radicals if our immune system is activated, and also just breathing in oxygen and metabolizing sugars. We're going to produce a lot of oxygen rich species that have an electron or have a hydrogen knocked off, and it's really going to be it'll bind to anything, including DNA, and so it can damage our DNA. It can damage our cells, and this is obviously an accepted hypothesis for why we age, why our tissues become wrinkled if we're out in the sun a lot. The free radicals, creates inflammation and a lot of free radicals, and that damages the tissue. If you get sunburned for 30 years, if you're a Northern European like I am, and you lying out on the beach for decades, I don't know if I did that, but we love getting tan and sunburn, then you're going to get wrinkles. And that's a lot of that comes from free radicals. So you want a lot of antioxidants in your diet, which is vegetables and colored pigments and things. But it turns out mushrooms are also incredibly high in phenolics and antioxidants. So that's a huge benefit. Also, for anti-aging, we want a high fiber diet because that's going to stabilize our blood sugar and our cholesterol. And it's going to benefit our microflora. And it's going to keep us regular. And so we need a high fiber diet. Mushrooms are the highest fiber food. We need more protein as we age because we can't digest and assimilate protein very well as we age. Not as well as when we're younger. The government says to boost the amount of protein that you get as we get older, because we can't assimilate as well. That's why we start losing muscle mass, partly because we're just sitting on our duffs, I guess, like we're doing now, including me. But part of it really is because we just can't assimilate the protein as well. So, and then also anti-inflammatory. Chronic inflammation underlies all chronic disease, whether it be cancer, diabetes, heart disease, asthma, you name it. And
excuse me, Chris.
Control inflammation.
Chris, we got the usual question of what dose for diabetes and for cancer, and I guess which type of mushrooms, I guess starting with diabetes.
Well, any of them are good. Maitake is especially good for diabetes. Mm-hmm. And I have that later on here, I think.
Okay. If need be, I'll let you go because.
Yeah, I have that later. I'm going to talk about exactly what mushrooms. And the next slide, it tells you what mushrooms.
Go for
it. This is basically just showing the biological effect that you want. So cancer prevention, you want anti-cancer effects, which mushrooms have in abundance, and immunomodulating. Mushrooms are the very best cancer protector food out there, or medicine. Diabetes and blood sugar regulation, insulin stabilization. Then you want lots of fiber. That's what's really going to do it. So mushrooms are fantastic for stabilizing blood sugar. Heart disease, we want fiber, we want anti-inflammatories. Mushrooms have it all. Immune suppression and stress, we want beta glucans, we want chitin, we want terpenes that are all found in mushrooms. Lift your mood. So for depression, anxiety, we want the diterpenes, the hericenones and aranicines. Those are diterpenes that are found in lion's mane. These are the most well proven with human studies. These are the most proven right here, the lion's mane. But you'll see it in the next slide. Liver support. We want triterpenes from reishi, and we want beta glucans for liver support. Mushrooms as nutritional supplements. We want very high amounts of vitamins, minerals, and protein, and that's going to be oyster mushroom. But I'll have it in the next slide. Mushrooms as a protein supplement. Mushrooms, again, are high in protein. All of these categories will have specific mushroom recommendations in the next slide. Nerve support, prebiotics, boosts immune functions and has an anti-inflammatory property. Preventing colds and flus and other upper respiratory tract infections. Then we want immune activation against pathogens. Release old trauma that is holding us back maybe by damping down the default mode network. And the default mode network are certain areas of our brain that, taken all together, really inform our sense of self, our ego, who we think we are. This is the default mode network. Well, it turns out psilocybin can basically reduce the potency that our default mode network has, and that can really open up a lot of things. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute in the next slide. Sleeping problems, terpenes. We want terpenes from reishi and amino-active beta glucans, which can help with sleeping problems. support and protect cognition and memory. We want an anti-inflammatory effect because as we age, our memory starts to decline, and that's mainly due to inflammation and scarring in the little tiny vessels in our brain and central nervous system. Support your cardiovascular system health, and weight loss, oyster and shiitake. So let's go on to the next one here, and these will give you specific ideas about mushrooms. Now, the dose of these mushrooms is not critical. In other words, it has a range. First of all, they're very, very safe to take, so you don't have to worry about that. But like taking an overdose particularly. Typically, based on research that has been done in clinical trials, the dose, if you're dealing with something significant like cancer, heart disease, whatever, I would be taking 5 to 6 grams of the powder per day, of the extract powder, 5 to 6 grams. And that's going to be about 1 to 2 teaspoons, depending on how heavy the powder is. It might be up to 2 level teaspoons a day, or a heaping teaspoon a day. That is more of a therapeutic dose. Now, you can take higher amounts. You could take 2 teaspoons a day. If I had cancer, I'd be making a lot of reishi and turkey tail extracts, and I'd be taking a teaspoon every 4 hours or something. I would be really taking a lot. A lot of these mushrooms, the research shows that there is it's dose dependent. The effects are dose dependent. So, but there's always going to be a threshold, whereas if you keep taking more, it's not going to help anymore. But I would say the threshold is about up to around, like I said, therapeutic dose in clinical trials around 5 to 6 grams a day. And that stands for most of these mushrooms. It's going to be about the same. But if you could maybe go up to 10 grams a day.
There's a question from Alan Gale, which may be something towards the end if we have time, about expanding on that reishi, oyster, shiitake, jelly fungi, support anti-aging, known mechanisms, and longevity pathways. I mean, that's a whole nother course, but.
Well, I have those specific slides in this.
Okay.
In here, but we don't have time to go through them all. It would take me 2 hours to go through them all.
No.
But
We'll do a part 2.
Can
you just talk a little bit? You mentioned chaga has been a buzzword right now in many mushroom enthusiasts, and it's not something that's very well known. Can you just briefly talk about chaga and the benefits of it?
Yes, I will. But let me go through this slide, and then I'll just take questions, general questions. I just want to point out that yes, what are the mechanisms? Anti-aging. I mentioned the mechanisms first: anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant, and so forth. So these are and immunomodulating. So almost in some of the cases here, the mechanism is going to be anti-inflammatory, immunomodulating in many different ways. Powerful phenolic antioxidants, and then the triterpenes, which have a lot of effects as well. So these are going to be, and the fiber, these are going to be inform a lot of the mechanisms, not all. But again, the slides coming up, I have a slide on each one of these categories that does have more mechanisms. So for anti-aging, I'm saying reishi, oyster, shiitake, and jelly fungi. Almost any of the fungi are going to be anti-aging because they have fiber, they have beta-glucans. But these are the ones that I think are the most beneficial, because oyster and shiitake can help reduce cholesterol and also act as a beta-glucan and an immunoregulator. But these are especially good for protecting the cardiovascular system, oyster and shiitake. And reishi, as it turns out, too. Jelly fungi also has a good amount of beta-glucans, has a lot of soothing compounds and anti-inflammatory compounds in it. Cancer prevention, again, it's going to be turkey tail reishi. Chaga, because chaga has a long history of being used for cancer in the Russian culture. So it contains a lot of phenolic compounds that probably have a beneficial effect and anti-cancer effect. Split gill has been, I say split gill and turkey tail because those are the two mushroom extracts that have the most amount of human clinical trials for treating cancer along with chemotherapy. And if people take the mushroom, well, they get two groups. One group gets the chemo, the other, and these are mainly gastrointestinal cancers that have been studied. One group gets the chemo, the other group gets chemo plus the mushroom extract. It turns out that in the best of the studies, if you get the chemo plus the mushroom, the 5-year survival rate could be up to 1/3% higher. Also, you have less nausea, less fatigue, and certainly less immunosuppression. So as we know, chemo is very, very immunosuppressive, which makes absolutely no sense for trying to treat cancer. I mean, that if anything was like a classic Western model, reductionist model of taking chemotherapy to kill fast-growing cells, kill the cancer, but then at the same time kill our bone marrow immune stem cells off. I mean, it's absolutely irrational. And not only that, don't let me get up my soapbox. Turns out that chemotherapy is not evidence-based either. There are no clinical studies showing that if you go into a chemo room where they're administering chemo, the smells, the feel in there, losing your hair, feeling toxed out, all of these things could definitely be placebo initiators, right? So how can they prove that you're going to do any better on this toxic chemo than you would if you just powered the mushrooms and an absolutely holistic regime, a whole program for health? I mean, they don't have any studies like that, and it's incredibly expensive too. So anyway, that's my summary of it. But turkey tail, reishi, chaga, split gill, and shiitake are the most widely studied mushrooms in clinical trials for benefiting people with cancer. Diabetes, maitake has some research showing that it can reduce and stabilize blood sugar. Shiitake also, and reishi and jelly fungi also, especially jellies, have been shown to reduce blood sugar levels in people where they're too high. Heart disease, reishi, oyster, shiitake, because they can reduce cholesterol and they also have powerful antioxidant properties and anti-inflammatory properties. Immune suppression and stress, turkey tail and reishi, because of their high beta-glucan content. Lift your mood, lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi are the mushrooms that have some indication that they could affect your mood and your brain chemistry. And again, there are many, many, many studies out there on all of these aspects. However, having said that, most of the studies are going to be in vivo and in vitro. The ones that have clinical studies, and again, I'll get a little plug for my book here, I review all of the clinical studies that have been done on mushrooms up to date, and which was up to about 6 months ago when we finished writing the book. And so I do review the clinical trials in my book. Now, I don't get into even in vivo and in vitro studies so much, but I do review the clinical trials. Liver support, reishi has some studies showing that it protects hepatocytes and the liver. And it's got good anti-inflammatory effects. Also, jellies. Mushrooms as nutraceuticals. Basically, all mushrooms, you can cook them and grind them up and use them for the protein and the nutrition. But oyster mushrooms are the most easily broken down and assimilable. And so I usually say if you're going to eat mushrooms for the nutrition and to take as a nutritional supplement, really eat a lot of oyster mushrooms, and shiitakes are fine too. Mushrooms as protein supplement, again, it's oyster mushrooms. Nerve support, diterpenes from lion's mane. Prebiotics, lion's mane. Lion's mane is made into prebiotic fiber products in Asia. And also shiitake is a good one. prevent upper respiratory tract infections. I like shiitake a lot. Turkey tail, you're taking the powder daily. Chaga and Agaricon are two that have a lot of antiviral compounds in them. So, excuse me, Chaga, and I didn't talk about Agaricon before. You can look it up. Agaricon has a lot of antiviral properties to it. So that's a good one to add to your immunomodulators. Release old trauma, psilocybin, or reframing it. Let's put it that way, reframing it. Sleeping problems, reishi and lion's mane. Support, protection, support and protect cognition and memory, lion's mane, reishi. And almost any of the mushrooms can help with that too. Weight loss, oyster and shiitake. So now I get into a lot of slides with more details, and you can certainly look at those on your own. But now let's stop and take questions if you have any.
Wow.
Go ahead, Arima.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, because you said lots of companies are just a filler, which I was also known. And I know that you have been talking about the powder, and here I am to show you like a pill. But the company that I wanted your opinion, the Real Mushrooms,
right,
is that one on your approved list, because their content of the beta-glucan is certified by the third-party lab, more than 20%. Some products are 25% of beta-glucans.
Yeah, they're one of the few that I would say are likely good. What again, the mushrooms are grown in China, so that's to me is a drawback. But they have good products otherwise. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for one more thing I did know, and I just want to mention and kind of testimonial. It's the Cordyceps are for the peak performances, and I was taking them just to keep going with my exercise. But I didn't know that the side effect of that it's anti-aging. And lately I have been complimented on my skin. Now I know why.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Good to know.
Neither did I.
I'll just add that Arima looks lovely on video, so I'm sure
You should see her close up.
that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, that's great. You're doing something right, that's for sure.
It's the mushrooms. It's the mushrooms.
So listen, friends, we've got about 15 minutes max. So let's be real concise in any kind of brain picking of Christopher's mushroom head that we want right now.
My apologies for being here late. Could I go ahead and ask a question?
Yeah.
Chris Bauman and then Alan.
Okay.
You'll be up, Alan. You're on deck.
So if you were to just take the mushrooms, turkey tail and reishi, without doing the chemotherapy, would that be different? Is it because it helps the body to deal with the chemotherapy, or is it actually helping to deal with the cancer?
Now you're saying if you just took the mushrooms without chemotherapy?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the turkey tail.
With other adjuvants. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, as a part of a program without the chemotherapy.
That's a big topic, isn't it? But I mean, I have personal experience with it, but I would say that if it were me personally, I wouldn't go for chemo. I'd go for the natural treatment program, and a centerpiece of that would be a lot of mushroom powders, but certainly not the only by any means. I mean, there are many other things that we can do.
Of course.
In a natural cancer care program. I have a whole handout and slideshow on that, based on what I've learned over the years. And also my wife passed away from cancer 6 years ago. And just what I learned working with her, because she decided to go for chemotherapy. And so, I think it has to be a personal choice whether you decide to go with chemo or not, or radiation. But I'm convinced that the best that we could possibly do is to just really, are a number of books out there. There are a number of clinics that really focus on natural care exclusively. Or another thing now that I've been reading studies on is microdosing chemo. So that's another strategy now is low dose chemo and plenty of other good stuff supporting our immune system. And that makes a lot of sense. Actually.
Yeah, it does.
Problem. So my question is, to what extent is the effect of mushrooms on the body one that's more direct in terms of metabolism effects, as opposed to one that's more indirect that might be through the microbiome, for example, or even affecting gene expression through epigenetic mechanisms?
Well, yeah, in reishi, you've got triterpene, which are C30 compounds, three or four rings typically. Those are bioactive. Some of them can act as estrogenic type compounds. Phytoestrogens, they're called. They might have some mild effect on our hormonal balance. They have strong anti-inflammatory properties, not indirectly but directly. So I mean, to me, directly is the beta glucans are being taken up by the body and distributed around the body, and they have biological functions. And so are the triterpenes, and so are the diterpenes. But the main compounds in mushrooms are terpenes, both diterpenes or C20 compounds, and triterpenes, C30 compounds. Those sterols, those have a lot of different biological activities, many, and they do affect the body, the cellular mechanism. They're taken up, or they trigger calcium channels and other types of ion channels, and change cellular functions. And beta glucans in general can be taken up by the body and distributed in some of the tissues. Even the bone marrow, you can find the pieces of beta glucan in the bone marrow, which stimulates stem cell production. So there are many different. I mean, the research is replete with it. You could go into the research on Google Scholar and say lion reishi, and you come up with 50 different direct biological effects or more. There's so much research.
So, Alan, I would say the answer to what you asked is yes, but there's hundreds of pathways and gene expressions and cellular communications. Mushrooms are the earth. I think here we are. We're talking about the earth. We're talking about having the earth in us and supporting our network of communication by having largely wild, some domesticated earth element in us that has all kinds of measurable and unmeasurable properties, but it's certainly, salutary. So my question is pretty much a concluder. Is any safety issue, any upper level issues, or if someone for whatever reason, had more mushrooms than their body could handle, what would be a symptom of reactivity?
Well, first of all, digestive upset, because
yes,
the fiber is very difficult for our body. The chitin is the same amino polymer that's found in crab shells and crustaceans. So that can cause a lot of GI distress if we're eating mushrooms that are not fully cooked or processed. So that's number one. And number two would be allergic effects. Some people are going to be allergic to the proteins in mushrooms. Mm-hmm. So it's always good the first time you eat a mushroom to eat a little bit of it, like a tablespoon of cooked mushroom, if you never had it before, and then try it out and see how you do. And if you're still alive the next morning, then you can have at it.
You can check yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
That's good.
So in my opinion, in my experience, I haven't seen that many people have allergic reactions to mushroom, to the higher Basidiomyces and actinomyces. I haven't seen that many people have reactions to them, except maybe, again, upset stomach if you eat a lot of them and they're not well cooked. That's one thing.
Also, if you're not well, it'll trigger reactions. So don't dose at high levels with people who are not well, because they will react. And that's always a challenge when you go, oh my gosh, but
yeah, just check for sensitivity. So those are the two most common reactions to mushrooms. And then, of course, thirdly, and probably most important of all, is that especially if you're picking wild mushrooms, that there are a few lethal mushrooms out there,
right.
amanitas and other ones. So Cortinarius, we have to know what they are. And in my book, I have the lethal 8. I talk about the lethal 8. Okay. So you can get an overview of the lethal mushrooms that are out there. And then I have another chapter on ones that will really upset people's stomach that have toxic compounds in them.
Yeah.
So a lot of mushrooms can have toxic compounds.
It's concentrated.
So you have to know what you're picking, basically.
Deep thanks to you, Christopher. We really appreciate, who you are and how you are and, this teaching, because I got to say, this is not a commercial. The Bauman Wellness material is not a commercial, and we're the only health educators I know who are not selling stuff. So think about that. Most nutrition and most things are commercial for products, and we're here for teaching and for bringing back a way of life that needs to come back for the earth and for the family of humans and animals and plants. So this consciousness is really important. And do read the book, because the book will be very informative. And it's going to take some time to read that book. There's a lot of content in there.
There is.
But just throwing products at problems is not a solution. And people who are not well need to work with people who have depth of knowledge to help them kind of understand their issues and understand the kinds of things that we can suggest. But it's really great to be together. And, I really acknowledge Christopher as one of our special people in this world. So, keep it going. And we will look forward to having more learning together with you, Christopher.
All right. Thanks.
And call on us if we can help you for anything. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Much
So
appreciated.
take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Great to see you, and thanks for coming.
Yeah, we're for real.